Andres de Doble A Sports. The San Jose Sharks this week just completed a Canadian road trip following the Four Nations break. 5 games in Canada versus the Flames, the Jets, the Habs, Senators, and the Maple Leafs. The Canadian road trip pretty much summed up how the entire season has gone for the Sharks. A great young offensive front with a terrible defense. They lost 3-2 versus Calgary, 2-1 in a strange overtime lineup decision by Ryan Warsofsky versus the Jets, 4-3 in overtime versus the Canadiens, and 5-3 versus the Senators. And with 4 straight losses and then being 0-9-4 versus Canadian teams, just when it begins to make you question Ryan Warsofsky and if he is the right coach for this team in the long term, they have to play the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, let's be real, entering this game, given they were, winless against Canadian teams, entering this game, the mentality of Sharks fans was, you know what, we'll accept our fate, just end it quickly, If you're going to kill the Shark, do it quickly and humanely. But they play the Leafs in Toronto, and they fall behind 2-0 in the second period. And that's what most Sharks fans were probably thinking in that moment. However, things take a turn in the third period. Thanks to 2 goals from Thompson and Toffoli in the third, they tie the game versus the Maple Leafs. They go into overtime, and with Georgiev not forgiving for once and having a great performance, the Sharks win in a penalty shootout and finally end their losing streak against Canadian teams. Finally, the Sharks get a win against one of these 7 teams, beating Toronto with a win coming in a shootout against the Leafs, which is why I'm making this video. I want to grade it. It's their first win against a Canadian team this year. And it was a win against the Maple Leafs, who are one of the best teams this year. With that, here are the Sharks' grades for this winning performance. Offensive front, A-. They did not score in the first 2 periods of the game, and the Sharks were trailing 2-0 entering the third period. But they produced in the third. Jack Thompson recovered a rebound from a shot that went wide and off the boards, and he scored. Then Wennberg provided a primary assist to Toffoli for the second goal. Wennberg was a notable player in the offensive front. He had a really good game with very good puck passing skills. The offensive front, to their credit, still stayed in the game despite going down 2 in the second period. Defensemen, B. The Sharks' defense conceded 2 power play goals in the second period. Nothing new from arguably the worst defense in the league and the worst ranked power play kill unit in the league as well. Yeah. It still doesn't... While it's nothing new, it still hurts to watch if you're a Sharks fan. Yeah. However, like the offense, they didn't just completely collapse after those 2 goals. They regrouped in the third period and held their own. They especially held their own in the overtime period, given they were on the power play kill for the first 2 minutes, following Luke Cunning's penalty in the final minutes of regulation time. Nobody expected the Sharks' defense to survive that overtime power play, but they did. Give the defense their fair share of credit for this game. They were a big reason why the Sharks did get this first win of the year versus one of the Canadian 7. Enforcers, B. They had a solid game, playing very physical and defending teammates. A couple of highlights to talk about from the Enforcers. Starting midway in the first period, Myers laid out a big hit on Barclay Goodrow as he cleared the puck out of the Sharks' defensive zone. It was not an extremely dirty hit. Myers didn't leave the ice and jump into the check. He didn't lift his elbow or go for the head like, that chicken wing elbow that we have seen. I think like with Matt Rempe, for example, he had a suspension because he did the elbow in one of the checks. But it was a big hit that Myers laid out on Barkley Goodrow as he cleared the puck out of the defensive zone. Again, it wasn't an extremely dirty hit, but it was slightly late because Myers got to Goodrow after he had already cleared the puck out. Nevertheless, Mario Ferraro quickly gave a response, and with that, we had a fight in the first period. Ferraro dropped the gloves with Myers, took more punches than he threw, but did get a couple of punches in, including one that did cut Myers on or around the nose. They both end up down on the ice, and the referees break them up from there. Was it a clean but hard hit? Was it late and dirty? Fans on YouTube and social media were split on it, it looked like. But nevertheless, I'll accept what Ferraro did. I'll respect it. It's a good thing to see that the Sharks enforcers and the Sharks players are willing to defend each other. They're willing to defend their teammates. I would rather see the players be quick to have each other's backs than be reluctant to in cases of big hits and penalties. Like, for example, like what was it in a past game against the Predators on that Ty Dellandrea hit. I'd much rather see them be quick to, in a scenario like the Dellandrea hit, I'd rather see them be quick to defend each other as teammates than be very reluctant to in a case like that. Then moving on to the third period, regarding the enforcers in the final minutes, Ryan Warsofsky puts Goodrow and Cunnin on the ice to play physical and hold off the Leafs, who put their best players on the ice to try and get that last minute game winner in regulation. The tough guys on the ice stopped them. Goodrow, while he has not been the best player by any means for San Jose, has been one of the Sharks' better players in terms of power play kills. However, Luke Cunnin gets penalized, resulting in that overtime power play that was dangerous for the Sharks. Definitely not ideal, but outside of that, the enforcers were good, especially given their opponents, one of the most informed teams right now. Goalkeeper. I definitely don't like Alexander Georgiev. I would much rather see Askarov be goalie number one right now and going forward. But my policy, my thing on the channel that I always hold up to, my standard that I always hold up to, that's for better word, on this channel is that I give credit when it is due, just like I criticize when it is justified. With that being said, I'm giving Georgiev an A grade for this game against Toronto. 25 saves out of 27 shots faced and a save percentage of 92%. That is a save percentage we rarely see from him. He made some big saves in this game. It was definitely his best performance during his time with San Jose so far. He played as if his career is on the line because he literally is fighting to keep his career alive. I don't see the Sharks signing him and keeping him next year. So, yeah, to Georgiev's credit, he had a very, very good game in Toronto. Head coach. A. In my opinion, this was Ryan Warsofsky's biggest win of the season. Ryan Warsofsky finally gets his first win versus a Canadian team, ending his allergy to Canadian teams and, in my opinion, saving his job. Entering this game, he was winless against any of the Canadian 7 teams. And with 3, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, with 3 in the Pacific Division, if he couldn't break the ice and finally get his team to win one of these games against a Canadian team, in my eyes, it would have very much put into question whether he is the guy going forward for SJ. But not anymore. In overtime, you saw him learn from his mistake he made a couple of games earlier in Winnipeg, where he put his third and fourth line players up against the Jets' top line, and they got cut down immediately in the overtime ending. This time, he had his best players out there on the ice. They killed that Luke Cunnin penalty well. Warsofsky learned from that mistake, and him not doing the same thing that he did in Winnipeg in this game was why they did not lose immediately in overtime. In both in general, in everyday life and in sports, they say the first time's the hardest. In sports specifically, they say the first win is the hardest. The first win as a head coach is always difficult, but once you get that first one, you can improve from there. It gets easier. And I think that is very likely the case for Warsofsky. That first win versus a Canadian team was definitely the hardest win for him to get. But he has finally cracked through the obstacles there. And these games should get easier, and his coaching should get better from here. Final score, Sharks win 3-2 in an overtime shootout versus the Leafs in Toronto to end their Canadian road trip after the Four Nations break. Overall, I would say this was an A- grade for the team as a whole. Wasn't a convincing win given it went into a shootout. Fortunately for the Sharks, the Leafs leafed harder than Georgiev could ever forgive. But with how the season has unfolded, whether it was in overtime, whether it was in regulation, listen, it doesn't matter. We beat a Canadian team for once. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. We're not going winless against Canadian teams this year. With that, their next game against a team from Canada will be on March 27th versus this same team, except this time the Leafs will be coming to the Shark Tank. So we'll see if the Sharks can go back-to-back on the Maple Leafs. We'll see what happens there, and what moves are going to happen in regards to both teams, really, and how both teams for that game look different following the trade deadline that is coming up. But that'll be it for me in this grades video. The Sharks finally beat a Canadian team this year. That's all for me in this video, folks. Leave a like and subscribe. Help support my passion project channel by hitting that subscribe button, please. It'll only help grow my channel more, and it'll help you guys stay informed on when I post videos or make community posts on my channel. So please leave a like and subscribe. Stay informed on my Sharks content, as well as any of my other content regarding sports, whether it's the 49ers, the Giants, the Mexico national team. They'll have some games coming up. So for those who are interested in the Mexico national team and specifically the CONCACAF Nations League Final Four, stay tuned as I'll have some videos coming up on that as well. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.